Right, I wanted to say a couple of things at this late hour. One, Deirdre didn't want me to say this, but our positivity rate for yesterday was 0.8%. That's after our schools and colleges have been open for almost a month. She didn't want me to say it because thought people would have a sense of false confidence, but it's good news. It just reminds you that number is bouncing around at a very low level. But more timely, we just issued the call for the special session. One, so judiciary can come in and approve our appellate and our Supreme Court judge picks that have been interim serving, and two, for our legislative session. Legislative session, Paul Mounds, led the discussions on our team. We really wanted to do two things in this legislative session, such as a special session. One, that it was timely, and two, that it did not have a fiscal impact. The most important issues and bills that are going to be raised is, number one, absentee ballots. A lot of discussion about absentee ballots. For me, I thought it was very important, given the fact that we've got a very high-profile election coming up in a little over a month. There's going to be 10, 20 times more absentee ballots than we've ever had before. And I want to put everybody's mind at ease and give the registrars all the flexibility they need to make sure we can count these votes on a timely and accurate basis. And that's what the absentee ballot bill allows folks to do. They can start processing the ABs earlier, the Friday before Election Day, checking signatures, outside envelope, making sure they're ready to go, ready to be counted when the time is right. And that time is right. It'll probably be earlier on Election Day, just to give everybody a little extra time so we can get our final results in on time or closer to being on time. Number two, second thing we had to do was school construction. It was very important to us that the budget numbers in the school construction bill match what we had in our previous budget. I didn't want anything leaking and getting more expensive. And I think we've reached a good agreement with the legislature that we've got a school construction bill. I think it's about $500 million. It reflects the numbers we had in our budget previously. Number three is the Transfer Act. This is just, maybe you wonder how timely is this, but it's about getting our economy moving again. And the Transfer Act, as you know, dates back to the mid-'80s. We're one of the few states to do it. Very complicated, really makes it tougher to move properties, especially brownfield properties, those with contamination. It sort of shifts some of the responsibility. Instead of being a guilty until proven innocent, now you as the seller have to certify in terms of where you are, in terms of the property as is, what spills may be on your watch. And at that point, then the seller responsibility and their insurance company. And allows, keeps the state out of it, and allows much more expedited selling of these properties. A lot of the brownfield properties, hundreds of properties that have been sitting vacant and unused, going back decades. And I think this is a bill that really makes a lot of sense. And every time I can get David Lehman and Katie Dykes both approving of an idea, I think it's got the right balance on the environment and development. And finally, as you can imagine, is the energy bill. We want to get those rules of the road, those goals set by the legislature in place now so that PURA can start working on those regulations now. It's going to take a little bit of time. As you know, for me, it was very important that we set in place the goals and metrics for performance-based regulation. No more automatic 9.5%, whether you do a great job or a not so great job. And this is coming, a little more than 30 days since ICEA, and I wanted to let the folks know, especially those who have been hit so hard by those long outages, that we have not forgotten. So what we got out of the Legislative Energy Environment Committee, good work there. Goal-based, not totally prescriptive. What we need to do in terms of response and recovery. Tying executive compensation in terms of response and recovery. What that means in terms of penalties and how those penalties are exacted, what you can do, and make sure that money doesn't go to the state, but goes to the consumer. That's a shift as well. And finally, I think the legislature rightfully asked for more detailed and regular reporting from PURA and DEEP, especially as regards ISO. That's the regional group that is setting a lot of the purchase of our energy. It's sort of unregulated from our point of view. We, the states, don't have representation there, and we're going to take a good hard look at what ISO looks like going forward to give us a lot more flexibility in terms of how we meet our energy needs in the future and how we do it in a carbon-free environment. I think it's good news. The legislature will be getting together in session next week, doing the judges, doing these 4 priority items, and then a number of other cleanup items before the end of the week, is my understanding. Thanks.
Governor, on the Transfer Act, so this is to keep liability with the seller, and the buyer will be now reassured that there's not some mystery below the earth that's going to haunt a project. Is that correct?
Sort of. I mean, my understanding is you own a dry cleaner, you've had it for 10 years, you're responsible for all the cleanups that happen on your watch, and you certify to the best of your knowledge, this is where we are. Then the buyer buys it as is with those declarations. If you find out a couple years later, oh my gosh, there's something there I didn't know about, the seller didn't have to prove a negative. This thing is clean forever, even for things that they weren't responsible for. And then then it'll be the private insurance industry and the liability guys that are with the buyer to see how that's adjudicated. Keeps the state out of it, allows these properties to finally start moving.
Governor, what about the absentee ballot? What are you exactly proposing? What mechanism are you proposing to be able to count these absentee ballots earlier?
Well, first of all, we're going to give the registrars flexibility if they want more time, get a little more time, certainly on the processing, even on the counting. Secondly, I'm so pleased that a half dozen of our universities have said they're going to give students time off. A number of companies have said we're going to give our employees time off. So we're making available an army of volunteers for any of the registrars that feel the need for help in terms of processing, counting, and poll watchers and the such. This is a younger demo that'll be helping out as well.
So not necessarily early counting, but counting just for a longer period of time. I know the legislature gave them 48 hours to.
My understanding is the most important thing is they can process the AB earlier, the Friday before election, make sure it's ready to go, ready to be counted. I have to figure out whether they can start counting them at 6 a.m. on election day or later. I think that discretion will be up to the registrars.
But you're not doing the postmark thing that you did for the primary, correct?
You have to have that ballot in by election day.
Some of the cleanup items, does that include crumbling foundations for condominiums, the annual failure to file act, which allows some taxpayers who unintentionally miss deadlines to file?
I can tell you the condominium associations will now answer the question as regards their ability to access the crumbling foundations money. That is included in the call.
Governor, there are things on this list, though, that could wait to January. So you said, you wanted to limit it to things that needed to be done now. PURA has suspended the rate increase that Eversource had in place in July 1. So why is it this needs to be done now instead of being fully vetted in regular session?
I think PURA fully vets it, and they wanted to get a head start. And a 4-month head start means an awful lot in terms of getting those regs in place in the next year or so. It's pretty tough putting in place a whole new performance-based regulatory scheme. So I approved of the thought that, look, there is something timely about letting them get a head start.
Unrelated topic, I guess, related to your first announcement. Our friend Ken Dixon from Hearst Media couldn't get here, but he wanted to ask about the new DPH rules for sports being played in Connecticut. And his take is they essentially close a loophole that would have allowed private football leagues to happen on both the high school and youth level. Excuse me, this thing is... why now? Why is this change being made now? Were you aware of it?
I think the Department of Public Health, following the National High School Sports Federation, wanted to give clarity in terms of what are the high risk, medium risk, and low risk sports that are coming around the corner in the later in the fall and winter season. And I think that lent clarity in terms of how we view each and every one of those sports and how the National High School Association views them.
But the timing, couldn't this been done earlier? I guess is one of the questions from our friend.
Well, I think the timing is pretty good. I mean, the sports are just getting going right now. I think we just got clarity from the National Association, and so we got it out fast as we could.
And just another cleanup item is the hemp bill. You guys have to make changes to the state pilot program.
Yeah, we are making those changes to put it into compliance with federal law.
What about the budget deficit? You guys have a few more days, till the end of the month to come up with a deficit mitigation plan.
Yeah, I think a couple things on that. Obviously, we're about the only state in the country that had a surplus at the end of the last fiscal year, for which I'm very thankful. And we do have the 7th largest rainy day fund in the country, which is not bad for a little state our size. The deficit mitigation plan is going to be related to 2 factors. One, what do the revenues look like in October, November? At least we'll have those numbers for the first quarter. And secondly, I think we'll have a much better idea of what you can expect in terms of a supplemental or more support coming from the federal government. So I think Melissa is going to give some clarity over the next couple of weeks, and then a lot of clarity over the next couple of months.
So you're going to wait, to go into a special session to have the legislature approve a deficit mitigation, or?
What I can tell you is we don't even know what the August, September numbers are. Melissa has said, give us a little more time so we can get a better idea, at least what those first quarter numbers are. This is a period of, let's say, some severe turbulence right now. And frankly, we thought we were going to probably see some sort of a bill coming out of Washington 2 months ago, last month, this month. There's still a lot of noise in terms of things that could happen before the election. Give us just a little more time. We'll have a lot more clarity.
You mentioned executive compensation on the utility bill. During one of the hearings, the CEO, Mr. Judge, had basically said, upon questioning, if we don't like the bill, we'll just sue. Do you have any thoughts, or have you gotten any feedback from Eversource that they may sue over this bill?
A little premature. We haven't even seen what the performance-based regulation is going to look like. Marissa's got a lot of experience with this. She did it when she was down in Maryland. The question is, what do the ratepayers pay for and what do the shareholders pay for? And that'll be clarified over the next year.
Yeah, but much of that proposal stuff that, as you said, would take effect next year. There's nothing really. There's very few provisions in the immediate, except maybe what is it? I don't even know if the compensation for lost food and medicine is effective.
No, this is all proscriptive. This is going to take a year to put into regulation. But look, we've been through this every big storm for decades and haven't gotten it right. Let's get it right this time.
How much dialogue have you had lately with Eversource? Have you had much dialogue with Eversource?
I think I met them a week or so ago, and they were talking about their securitization idea, and we had a little back and forth about what's included in it. It can't be everything in the kitchen sink. And then they went on to meet with the legislative leaders.
And that's by the wayside, the securitization idea, at least as far as the legislature is concerned, as far as you were concerned?
I think as far as the legislature is concerned, yes. I don't think it's allowed under their bills. Look, Marissa can find a lot of ways that you don't pay for a 100-year storm in 1 year. We can factor in payback on those costs over a longer period of time. The bigger question is who pays it, ratepayers or shareholders?
What does the environmental justice bill do? That's part of the call, right?
I believe that is part of the call. I can't tell you exactly what they've done. I think they've made some tweaks that bring it up to spec.
And campus security, is that not part of the call?
I think that's going to come up in January, Christine.
You mentioned next week for special session. Will that be Monday going into?
Well, it won't be Monday, Yom Kippur. My hunch is it'll be at the end of the week.
And then Danbury's still dealing with infections. Kids still can't go back to school. I believe it's a moderate COVID infection now. Any concerns?
I can't tell you exactly where Danbury is in the infection rate. I know they spiked up to 7%. We brought it down to 3%, and it's hanging somewhere in between those two. I'll be frank, it's a bit of a concern. We brought in the fire brigade. We did all the testing. We did all the quarantine. We did everything we could, and it hasn't gone away yet, but it is continuing to go down, not as fast as I wanted.
Governor, do you know if we've crossed the unfortunate threshold of 5,000 deaths in Connecticut today. We were certainly verging on, I think it was maybe one more death would have taken us to that mark today.
No, we're not at that point.
How do you feel about UConn? They've been walking a tight balance. They've been doing so well with their numbers, and compared to the rest of the country, I'm going up there to talk to some of the students about it. How do you feel about UConn and how they're doing?
Look, as you know, I've been most worried about university because I see them a little more poppy. Frankly, Sacred Heart looks like my school that's most risky right now, not for on-campus behavior, nothing going on in the classroom, but off-campus. And there they've had some infections. UConn, I think, has done pretty well. I mean, they've got capacity for, say, 240 infected people, and I think they're, certainly at much less than 100. So far, and they've been doing this for about a month. So I'd like to think that they're going to make it.
Back to the Transfer Act, are you saying if that's done correctly, that's kind of a form of economic development, if that's done properly?
Yeah, we've had this clumsy, clunky, slow-moving Transfer Act dating back to the mid-'80s that led to great disputes and made it impossible to transfer a lot of properties. And Chris, we got hundreds of properties that some level of contamination on there. This clarifies for the seller when they can sell it and clarifies for the buyer what they're buying and who's at risk.
Okay.
All right, everybody, enjoy. Have a good holiday.